picture this.
Yeah.
You are crouched right at the edge of a river.
Sure.
The dirt under your feet is damp. The air is thick, really humid. And it is exactly 3.3 million years ago.
Wow, going way back.
Right, but here's the massive twist.
No.
You are not human.
No.
In fact, your kind, like our entire genus, won't even exist for another 500,000 years.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about.
But there is this really heavy rock in your hands. And a moment ago, you just you smashed it against another rock that was resting on the ground, and now one of the edges is sharp.
Right.
Sharp enough to cleanly slice through animal skin.
Yeah.
You don't have like a spoken word for it yet, but you just somehow know this object changes absolutely everything.
It's a really profound image, and I mean, it perfectly frames the massive historical shift we are looking at today.
Yeah.
We're pulling from this really incredible piece of source material. It's a documentary from the YouTube channel Old Bones.
Such a great channel.
It really is. And the goal for this deep dive is to sort of chart the definitive archaeological evidence of technological improvement. Because, you know, as a student of human history, understanding this physical journey from that crude smashed stone all the way to the sophisticated mechanics of ranged weapons is essential.
Exactly. And we're going to look at how those specific innovations radically rewired human cognition and society.
Yeah, because we really want to challenge a core assumption here.
Right. So let's unpack that, because the common assumption is that human intelligence evolved first. Like, we assume we just got smart, our brains grew, and then as a byproduct of that intelligence, we invented the weapon.
Right. That's the standard narrative.
But the researchers in our source material are arguing for the exact opposite.
They are.
They're saying the weapon didn't come from human intelligence.
Yeah.
The physical creation of the weapon is actually what forced human intelligence to develop.
Yeah, and to really understand that total reversal, we have to start with the Lamechwi discovery.
Oh, this story is wild.
Ugh. It really is. So in 2011, there's this archaeologist, Sonia Harmand, and her team. They were working near Lake Turkana in northern Kenya.
Right.
And they literally just took a wrong turn in the desert. They got lost.
Which is like the best way great discoveries happen.
Oh, right? So they decided to just survey the dry, rocky landscape they had accidentally stumbled into. And what they found were about 150 stone tools just scattered right there in the ancient dirt.
Just a totally lucky mistake. But I mean, finding old rocks isn't necessarily earth-shattering on its own.
No, not usually.
It's the date attached to those rocks that caused this total paradigm shift.
Exactly. Because when geologists analyze the sediment layers, you know, to determine the age of these tools, they didn't just guess. They used this process called paleomagnetism.
Right, because the magnetic field flips.
Yeah. The Earth's magnetic field periodically flips, and the magnetic minerals in the dirt align with whatever the magnetic pole was at the exact time they settled.
That is so cool.
It's basically a geological barcode. So by reading the magnetic signature of the sediment that was locking those tools in place, they got a firm date, 3.3 million years ago.
Which, I mean, that completely shattered the previous archaeological record.
By a lot.
By a massive 700,000 years. When this was published in the journal Nature in 2015, the source describes it as setting the old record on fire.
It really did.
And trying to wrap my head around this timeline is just difficult, because the oldest known fossilized members of our genus, Homo, they only appear in the fossil record around 2.8 million years ago.
Right.
So we are basically talking about finding the architectural blueprints for a modern house centuries before anyone has even invented the brick.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, if we weren't even us yet, if we didn't have the human brain yet, what was the intent behind making these sharp edges?
Well, to answer that, we really have to look at the physical mechanics of what they were actually doing, because the technique was incredibly crude.
Oh, wait.
Some of these stones weighed up to 30 pounds.
30 pounds.
Yeah, so they weren't delicately chipping away small flakes of flint like some master craftsman.
No.
They were holding a massive stone in two hands, lifting it way up, and just battering it down against a stationary anvil stone.
Wow.
It is functionally much closer to how modern chimpanzees use rocks to crack open nuts. Much closer to that than how later humans would carefully knap stone blades.
So it was really driven by raw instinct then.
Exactly.
Like just pounding, cutting it, or maybe smashing open scavenged bones, you know, to get to the calorie-dense marrow inside.
Yeah, the mechanics were primitive, but the cognitive spark was totally revolutionary.
Oh, so.
It's the sudden realization that a hard, natural object, when you break it in a very specific way, yields a completely new property. an edge.
Ah,
That single conceptual leap is the ancestor of every spear point, every arrow, and every kitchen knife that comes after it.
but okay, how do we get from a 30-pound smashed rock driven by instinct to a highly designed aerodynamic weapon? Because looking at the timeline, there's just a massive void in the archaeological record after that.
Well, there is a void, yeah. But it's really caused by biology, not a lack of invention.
Right, because of rot.
Exactly. For millions of years, the archaeological record looks completely lopsided. We just see stone, stone, and more stone.
Because stone survives.
Yeah. In a normal environment, bacteria and fungi rapidly devour organic materials. So wood, sinew, plant fiber, it all rots away within a few years. We only find the stones because they're the only things that survive the biological decay process.
Which means finding wood from that era shouldn't even be possible. Like, it defies the standard rules of decay.
It really does.
But in the 1990s, in an open-pit coal mine near the town of Schöningen in Germany, archaeologists uncovered an absolute miracle.
The Schöningen spears.
Yeah.
They were buried deep in this waterlogged mud, and that dense, wet mud essentially created an anoxic environment.
Meaning no oxygen.
Exactly. It perfectly sealed out the oxygen, which choked off the bacteria and completely halted the rotting process.
That is just incredible luck.
So archaeologists uncovered 9 spears carved from spruce and pine, a longer lance, and several of these double-pointed throwing sticks. And the crazy thing is, these were not just sharpened branches broken off a tree.
No, they were aerodynamically engineered.
Yeah.
The source details how these spears were 6 to 8 feet long, but the thickest, heaviest part of the wood was intentionally left about a third of the way down from the tip.
Right.
So they were front-heavy. They were balanced exactly like a modern Olympic javelin, so they would fly straight and true through the air.
It's brilliant.
Whoever sat down to carve these absolutely understood the invisible physics of flight.
And we also know exactly how they were used. Because they weren't just found sitting in isolation.
Right, they were at a kill site.
A massive kill site. They were tangled up with the butchered bones of around 50 horses.
50 horses. That is insane.
And one of those horse pelvis bones actually still had a hole from a spear strike sitting right there in the bone.
I mean, you don't just stumble into 50 half-ton panicking horses and take them down by accident.
No.
The sheer danger of that scenario is terrifying to even think about.
Oh, absolutely. Taking down a herd of fast, massive animals requires a massive shift in cognitive load.
Right.
To pull off a hunt of that scale requires foresight, strategic positioning, and really complex communication to flank and trap the herd.
You have to work as a team.
Above all, it requires group trust. You have to implicitly trust the person standing next to you to hold the line when a 1,000-pound animal charges.
Oh, man.
So the wooden spear found in that mud isn't just a physical object. It is the physical manifestation of a group of primates moving and thinking as a single coordinated body.
Which brings us to a really fascinating debate detailed in the source. Who exactly was holding those spears?
Yes.
Because for decades, the textbook answer was Homo heidelbergensis, living maybe 300,000 or 400,000 years ago.
Right. That date was based on analyzing the sedimentary rock layers above and below the spears.
Okay.
But a 2025 study shook up that foundational timeline using a totally different technique. It's called amino acid geochronology.
This part blew my mind.
It's so clever. Essentially, living snails build their shells using amino acids that have a specific left-handed structural orientation.
Okay.
And the moment the snail dies, those molecules slowly start to flip to a mirror image right-handed structure.
I just love the ingenuity of this. It happens at a predictable rate.
It does. It acts as a biological stopwatch.
Yeah.
So by measuring the ratio of flipped to unflipped molecules in tiny snail shells, shells found buried in the exact same layer of dirt as the spears scientists calculated a much younger age.
Wow.
That new dating method pulled the age of the spears all the way down to around 200,000 years ago.
And it's that 200,000-year timestamp that forces us to change the suspect completely.
Exactly.
If we're looking at 200,000 years ago in Europe, we are no longer talking about Homo heidelbergensis. We are looking directly at Neanderthals.
Now, to be fair, the amino acid method is actively debated in the scientific community.
Right, sure.
Not every researcher accepts the newer, younger date, but the identity of the specific species almost doesn't matter as much as the undeniable behavior we're seeing.
Yeah. Whether it was heidelbergensis or Neanderthals, the existence of these spears completely dismantles the old sort of cartoonish stereotype of the dim-witted brute.
Totally.
The pattern is crystal clear. highly complex social lives and strategically planned cooperative hunting were firmly established.
And speaking of planning, there was a 2023 PLOS one study that looked really closely at one of the double-pointed throwing sticks found at that same site.
Yes.
And the implications honestly push back on everything I ever learned in grade school. They found that this stick wasn't just stripped of bark and smoothed down, the surface of the wood was intentionally seasoned.
Yeah, that is a massive detail.
Right.
The maker stripped the wood and deliberately left it to dry out over a long period before they even finished shaping it.
Wow.
Because as wood dries, it shrinks and hardens, which prevents it from cracking later upon impact.
That is someone sitting down, altering an object, and knowing full well they won't use it today, or even tomorrow.
They are building a tool for next month. That requires a brain capable of working entirely in the future tense.
It really is the birth of long-range foresight. And those specific throwing sticks reveal another profound layer of early society.
How so?
Because a throwing stick is lighter and it relies on rotational momentum,
Okay.
rather than the massive upper body strength required to thrust a heavy spear into a horse. So it could be utilized by the wider community. It actually allowed women, older individuals, and even children to actively participate in the hunt.
Yeah, the source points out that these scaled-down throwing sticks were likely used as training tools.
Exactly.
Kids were participating in the survival of the group, which basically turns the weapon into the very first classroom.
I love that idea.
Generation to generation, this hard-won mechanical knowledge is being formally passed down.
It represents a really beautiful transition. We move from the Lemekli Stone Edge, which was driven by the raw instinct of the present moment,
Right.
to the Schöningen spears and throwing sticks, which represent a formalized curriculum built for the future.
But a thrown spear hits a biological wall eventually.
It does.
No matter how perfectly you season the wood or how perfectly you balance the center of gravity, the weapon is only as fast as the human shoulder socket allows.
Yeah, there's a hard limit. So to break the speed limit of human anatomy, they had to stop relying solely on their biology and start manipulating physics.
Oh, this is the good stuff.
They had to invent the very first real machines.
We are talking about the atlatl, or the spear thrower.
Yes.
When I look at the jump from the spear to the atlatl and then eventually to the bow, it feels exactly like the jump from analog to digital technology.
Oh, that's an interesting way to frame it.
Because with a hand-thrown spear, the system is purely analog. The physical force you put in is exactly the physical force you get out. It's a 1-to-1 ratio.
Right.
But the atlatl, and later the bow, they act like digital multipliers. They take your baseline human input and run it through a mechanical code, basically leverage and stored energy, to exponentially amplify the output.
The mechanics of the atlatl are just ingenious. It is essentially a fake external second arm.
A second arm.
Yeah. It's a carved piece of wood, or sometimes bone or antler, about 2 feet long, and it has a small hook carved at the far end.
Okay.
You cradle the back of a flexible spear, often called a dart, right into that hook. And as you step forward and swing your arm, the atlatl acts as a lever.
Right.
It effectively moves the pivot point from your shoulder all the way out to the end of the atlatl, adding 1.5 feet of artificial length to your throwing arm.
And increasing the radius of the swing does magical things to the velocity.
It multiplies the speed exponentially. Furthermore, the dart itself is designed to flex.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, as you push forward, the dart bends, storing spring energy, and then snaps straight as it leaves the hook. A skilled thrower can launch a dart at over 90 miles per hour.
90 miles per hour.
Yeah. That is vastly faster and deadlier than any human arm could achieve alone.
And we have hard archaeological proof of this engineering. The source highlights a 17,000-year-old carved reindeer antler hook found in the cave of Schöningen in France.
Right.
But the technological leap doesn't stop with leverage.
Yeah.
The bow and arrow completely abandons the swinging lever entirely and relies on something even more advanced, pure stored energy.
The conceptual leap of the bow is phenomenal.
It really is.
Instead of a rigid stick, you make the wood intentionally flexible. You draw a string back slowly. You are patiently loading the bent wood with tension, taking your physical effort and storing it inside the weapon itself.
Wow.
The machine literally holds your energy. And then you release all of that accumulated effort in a single, violent, instantaneous snap.
Now, finding fully intact wooden bows from deep antiquity is nearly impossible, right? Because of the rotting process we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
But the stone and bone tips survive. The oldest evidence points to Sibutu Cave in South Africa, where researchers found stone arrow points dating back 64,000 years, and bone points dating back 61,000 years.
And to understand the difference this machinery made, researchers in France ran a brilliant proof-of-concept experiment.
Oh yeah, the goat experiment.
Yeah. They recreated ancient stone points, attached them to shafts, and fired them at a goat carcass in 3 different ways.
Okay.
Thrust by hand, launched with an atlatl, and shot with a bow.
And the results were staggering.
Really staggering.
The hand-thrown spears barely broke the thick skin of the goat, but the arrows shot from the bow penetrated more than 10 inches deeper into the carcass, with some passing completely through the body cavity.
Yeah.
So, looking at those penetration metrics, I have to ask, how did putting that much physical distance between the hunter and the prey fundamentally change the human experience?
Well, it completely altered the evolutionary calculation of survival.
Makes sense.
Before the atlatl and the bow, to secure protein, you had to get intimately close to a panicked animal, an animal that could easily gore you, trample you, or crush your skull.
Yeah, not ideal.
Every hunt was a roll of the dice with your own life. But high-velocity ranged weapons allowed humans to stay hidden in the brush. You could strike from 30 or 40 yards away.
Wow.
You no longer had to risk your own physical body to feed yourself.
But this distance didn't just change how we secured our food. It fundamentally rewired primate politics.
It did.
This is the part of the source material that absolutely floored me.
It brings up a hypothesis championed by thinkers like anthropologist Paul Bingham and primatologist Christopher Bone. It's known as the reverse dominance hierarchy.
Okay, so if you look at standard primate hierarchies, like chimpanzees or gorillas,
Right.
the biggest, most physically aggressive male sits at the top of the social ladder. He hoards the food, he controls the group, and he rules entirely through raw physical force. It is a dictatorship of muscle.
Exactly. Because in a hand-to-hand fight, the biggest bully always wins. The biology dictates the social structure.
Right.
But what happens to that social structure when you introduce a machine that kills instantly from a distance?
The entire math of physical bullying breaks down.
Totally. Raw physical strength no longer guarantees dominance.
Wow.
If an alpha male tries to hoard all the meat, a coalition of weaker, smaller individuals can simply step back 30 yards and depose that tyrant with a volley of arrows, with almost zero physical risk to themselves.
The ranged weapon is basically the great equalizer.
It
This
is.
democratized power. If someone in the group got too greedy or too violent, the rest of the group could quietly form a coalition and permanently put him in his place.
Yes.
It replaced the dictatorship of muscle with a surprisingly flat egalitarian social structure.
And anthropologists actually actively document this dynamic in living hunter-gatherer societies today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the constant underlying threat of lethal ranged retaliation keeps the group egalitarian. People are forced to share.
That makes total sense.
Some researchers even argue this leveled playing field is the primary reason our species became noticeably less reactively aggressive over the last few 100,000 years. In a way, the weapon created human equality.
It is an incredible thought. But the source material does not shy away from the deeply tragic irony of this development.
No, it doesn't.
If weapons flattened the hierarchy and created equality, why are the findings from the ancient graves at Jebel Sahaba so incredibly grim?
Yeah, the shadow of this technological leap is found at that exact site, Jebel Sahaba, which is located in the Nile Valley of Sudan.
Right.
It is one of the oldest organized cemeteries ever discovered, dating back between 13,000 and 18,000 years ago.
Wow.
At that time, a shifting climate was drying out the landscape, which pushed diverse populations together really tightly along the Nile, severely increasing competition for resources.
And a 2021 microscopic study analyzed the 61 bodies buried there.
Yeah.
And the numbers are just devastating.
They are. 67% of the bodies carried distinct wounds from stone weapons.
Unbelievable.
Researchers documented more than 100 separate bone injuries across the group. Embedded directly in the skeletons were the broken, jagged tips of stone spears and arrows.
What haunts me is the specific nature of those wounds. We're talking about men, women, and small children.
Yeah.
And many of them had both healed and unhealed bone traumas.
And that biological detail tells a very specific, dark story.
Right.
When a bone is injured, the body immediately starts trying to weave new calcium over the trauma to repair it.
Okay.
We can clearly see that biological remodeling process under a microscope. Finding smooth, healed bone scars right next to the shattered, unhealed bone from the fatal blow tells us this wasn't just one terrible day.
It wasn't a single battle on an open field.
No.
It was a lifelong cycle of raids and ambushes. The same families, the same localized hatreds year after year.
Exactly.
The cognitive leap required to plan ahead and cooperate to hunt a herd of horses was now being used to plan complex, coordinated ambushes against other humans.
It's tragic.
The weapon doesn't care which direction you point it.
It is the ultimate dual-use technology. The exact same mechanical skill and cognitive foresight that elevated our ancestors out of the animal kingdom and leveled the social hierarchy were seamlessly applied to intraspecies violence.
Which brings us back to you, listening right now. Later today, when you go into your kitchen to prepare dinner, just pull open a drawer and look at a simple stainless steel knife.
Yeah.
It feels so mundane. But as you trace the history we've discussed today, you realize that knife is the direct physical descendant of that smashed rock by the river in Kenya 3.3 million years ago.
It really is.
It is an unbroken line of intent, passed hand to hand, generation to generation.
Because humanity didn't conquer the planet with sharp claws or venom or thick biological armor.
No.
I mean, a chimpanzee is vastly stronger than us pound for pound. We conquered the planet with the cognitive ability to look at ordinary, inert objects, a round rock, a flexible branch, a piece of animal sinew, and ask, what could this become?
We look at the biological limits of our own arms and imagine mechanical ways to make them longer and faster. We learn to manipulate the invisible laws of physics.
Yes.
But I want to leave you with a final provocative thought that builds directly on the core premise we've unpacked today.
Let's hear it.
If the creation of physical weapons tools that artificially extended the reach of our bodies was the very thing that rewired early human intelligence and flattened the ancient primate power dynamics,
Right.
how will the current explosion of autonomous artificial minds rewire us next?
Ooh, that's a big question.
If physical tools that extended the body leveled the ancient hierarchy, what will tools that artificially extend our cognition do to human social hierarchies in the distant future?
We have spent millions of years extending the arm. We are now figuring out how to extend the mind itself. The social implications of that are staggering.
Just something to chew on. But for now, just imagine yourself back there, crouched in the damp dirt by the river, holding a heavy, broken rock, feeling, for the very first time, the sharp, undeniable reality of an edge.